At 1 a.m., a very strange-looking man appeared. He was carrying a sack on his back. When he heard someone calling out to him, he panicked, quickly threw the sack into an open manhole, and disappeared completely. This is where one of the most difficult cases began, so difficult that the details were nearly impossible to connect. Eventually, the case was filed against an unknown perpetrator. But there are strange and terrifying details in one of the most bizarre stories you'll ever hear. Music. In 2004, in Old Cairo, in a narrow inner street, a strange man appeared suddenly. His face was completely covered, and he was carrying a sack on his back. His movements were suspicious and unsettling. Anyone who saw him would immediately feel that he was up to something. At the same time, one of the area's residents happened to be awake, sitting on his balcony. The man's suspicious movements caught his attention, so he called out to him loudly, asking what he was doing. As soon as his voice rose slightly, the man with the sack panicked, ran, and tossed the sack into an open manhole, then disappeared completely. Because of this strange behavior, the resident quickly went down to the street and tried to search for him in every direction. But the man had vanished. 3 hours later, at exactly 7 a.m., as people began heading to work to start their day, a garbage collector was seen holding the sack and screaming loudly. When he opened it, he found half a corpse inside the lower half of a woman's body. At first, the garbage man thought the sack contained something valuable, which is why he took it out of the manhole. The manhole had been clogged, but upon opening the sack, he discovered the horrifying content. People quickly gathered around, and the police were called. Officers arrived promptly, opened the sack, and saw the gruesome scene: a lower half of a woman's body. She appeared to be an elderly woman. Bits of her worn clothing were still present, indicating she was poor. Her feet were cracked and weathered, showing signs of hard labor and long hours of walking or working. Initial forensic assessments confirmed she had been dead for more than a day. The challenge now was to find the upper half of the body to identify the victim and proceed with the investigation. The police began questioning witnesses, and no one reported seeing anything until the resident, who saw the strange man at night, came forward. He told the authorities everything he had seen, but couldn't identify the man at all. The stranger had disappeared without a trace. There were no surveillance cameras in the street at that time in 2004, making the investigation even harder. And since the man appeared late at night when the street was deserted, no one else saw him. The investigation continued for 4 days. The police examined every missing person report, but none matched the description of the woman, an elderly woman missing for more than a week. Forensics eventually reported that the lower body belonged to a woman in her 60s, and that she had been strangled using a rope or cloth that had been wrapped around her neck. The dismemberment occurred a day or two after the murder. This suggested that the killer had remained calm and took his time. The cracks on the woman's feet hinted that she was constantly moving, likely working on the streets. Investigators speculated she may have been a street vendor or a beggar. A full week passed since the discovery of the lower half, and still no one reported a missing elderly woman. Police searched the area and nearby districts, but found nothing, no missing person reports that matched her. Because of the ambiguity and the masked man who disposed of the sack, the case became a major challenge for the police. The only concrete information came from the forensic report. There was no clear evidence to tie any suspect to the crime, and whoever committed this crime seemed to know what they were doing. As long as the upper half of the body was missing, no one could identify the victim or confirm this was a full-fledged murder case. Eventually, after the police failed to find the rest of the body, the case was labeled as unknown perpetrator. But then came a turning point. The crime had stirred fear throughout the neighborhood, and people regularly asked police for updates. The head detective started noticing a particular man. He was always asking too many questions, too eagerly. He asked every officer and every security personnel about any updates. This raised the detective's suspicions. Why was this man constantly at the police station? They discovered that he was a known criminal named Abdel Nasser Ahmed Ismail, 38 years old, with 11 prior charges: robbery, attempted murder, and more. He had just finished serving a 15-year sentence for trying to rob an elderly woman. When he failed to rob her, he cut off her arm. He was caught, convicted, and imprisoned. After his release, he was required to report to the police station daily, for a probation standard for high-risk individuals. What shocked the detective was that Abdel Nasser was always punctual except for one single day. That same day just happened to be the day the lower half of the body was found. The detective decided to investigate him quietly. Abdel Nasser was the only child of an elderly woman who sold vegetables under a nearby bridge. They lived alone, in a modest apartment in an area called Istanbul Anir. When asked casually, neighbors mentioned that his mother hadn't been seen in over a week, and that they'd had a fight shortly before she vanished. The pieces began to fall into place. No one reported the mother missing because they had no relatives or close friends. 2 days after the police spread the rumor that the case would be closed as unknown, Abdel Nasser seemed overjoyed. He was cheerful, joking around like he had won something. That was the final clue the detective needed. So at 3 a.m., the detective returned to the station. Abdel Nasser was there, fulfilling his nightly check-in. The detective gave him money and asked him to go buy food, kebab, kofta, and cigarettes. Abdel Nasser was thrilled and proud of the detective's trust. When he returned with the food, the detective invited him to eat together. Abdel Nasser couldn't believe it, dining with the head detective. They laughed and talked, until the detective leaned in and said, "I'll give you the biggest reward if you just tell me where you hid the upper half of your mother's body." Abdel Nasser froze. He couldn't speak. The detective continued, "I know everything. I know you killed your mother, cut her in half, and you're the masked man who threw her remains in the manhole." Abdel Nasser's face and behavior gave him away. He confessed everything. From birth, he never knew his father. His mother raised him alone, selling vegetables to support them. Every day, she gave him money, even during his prison time. She always visited and begged him to reform. When he was released, he promised to turn his life around and told his mother he wanted to marry a woman he loved. His mother refused not the marriage, but that particular woman, who had a terrible reputation. They fought. He demanded money. When the argument escalated, he strangled her. He left her body in the apartment and went to check in at the police station to maintain his alibi. The next day, he dismembered her body with a knife, placed one half in a sack, and dumped it near a factory far from their area. Later, he returned for the second half and dumped it into the manhole in Old Cairo. Unfortunately for him, the manhole was clogged and the sack remained visible. The police retrieved the upper half of the body from the location Abdel Nasser described. He was charged, tried, and sentenced to death. The false rumor about closing the case as unknown was the key to solving it all.